Hello everyone, thank you so much for checking out this video here. My name is Bonibon, as the name up there suggests. What you are watching right now is my submission video for GDQx 2019. The game that you're going to be seeing here is a game called Neutopia. It is for the TurboGrafx-16, or the PC Engine as it was called in Japan. And this is a game that I have run for several marathons, most notably for Calithon, as well as RPG Limit Break this year. Both of them were very well received. It's a very fun game to speedrun and an even more fun game to watch. And I hope you enjoy watching it as well. So without further ado, I think I'll just go ahead and dig right in here. I am playing this on an actual TurboGrafx-16 hardware. You see my pad right there. So this is it's also one that I have modded to do output that will obviously go to my CRT, but then can be split to be used for streaming as well. So we're gonna go ahead and get started here. We're just gonna go ahead and let the demo run so that we can get back to the title screen. So what I'm gonna be doing here is, though I am submitting the 100% and any percent categories, what you're gonna see me running here is the 100% category. And the reason why I'm doing this is because obviously it will include things from both categories, but as I'm going through the run, I will be sure to point out the points where I'm doing things that are exclusive to the 100% run that I would otherwise skip in the any percent run. Alright, and I think we're going to go ahead and get started right now. So here's your lore. We're going to have the evil wizard Dearth beam himself down in the middle of the night, go into Neutopia's main temple, and whisk away with the Princess Aurora. Once the sun rises, we will summon our hero. This is the protagonist we'll be using in the game. His name is Jazeta, and he is going to be our hero. And this lady here, the old mother, is the one who's telling us how he is going to be heroic, and how he will do so is by collecting the 8 medallions of the wisdom of the wise men from years past. And once he's able to collect them and affix them here, in the temple, that will open the way to Dearth's evil lair on the North Pole, where he can confront him and bring the princess back. So once she's done talking, the very first thing we do here is we obtain the item that is in this cave. Now, right off the bat, if I were doing an any percent world record percent run, I wouldn't be getting this, which is the Book of Revival. What the Book of Revival does is it allows us to obtain passwords, which will give us some marathon safety if we choose to do it. So, if I am going to do any percent in a marathon setting, I would get that anyway, just so that I would be able to get my password, save my game, reset if I needed to, without obviously having to go back to the very beginning. We take a little detour here to pick up some bombs and some medicine. Bombs are going to blow open walls. Medicine is going to refill our life. And one more note about the book is that we are only going to be using it if we need to in a couple of spots, just to create the password, which will bring us back to that point if we happen to die, as opposed to all the way back to the beginning. So the way that the world of Neutopia works is that there are actually 4 different overworlds, which are referred to as spheres in this game. And they're done in a very linear order. What we're in right now is the terrestrial sphere, or the land sphere. Next we'll do the subterranean sphere, then the sea sphere, and we'll finish off with the sky sphere. Now this item that I'm picking up here is the fire wand. This is arguably the most important item in the game. It will mostly be used as an assault weapon. However, it does have other uses as far as opening secret passageways, clearing paths, so on and so forth. So what I'm about to demonstrate on the next screen coming up here is going to be a great example of static enemy movement. I was able to weave my way in that exact pattern through those enemies because I know, at least initially, the pattern in which they are going to move. So, when your timing is right and when you enter screens on the correct tile every time, you can, there are plenty of instances where you'll be able to just walk right through and not get damaged if you know what you're doing and where the enemies are going. So we're going to take a detour here to reveal this secret passage. And what this old man here is going to do is he is going to give us an extra segment of life. He's also going to refill any damage we have taken, which is nice. Now, the reason why we take close to a minute detour to get this has to actually do with that fire wand that you now see in my 2 slot up in the upper left-hand corner. There's a very interesting mechanic with how the fire wand works as far as its damage output as well as the kind of shape and trajectory of the fire that comes out of the wand. And it's based on your current life total. Not your maximum, but however much life you have currently. There are a few different kind of stages of the fire wand that you will experience when you have at least 4, 8, and 12 segments of life. So right now we're in the 4+ range. So we've just entered our first crypt here, or dungeon. Each of the 4 spheres has 2 crypts, and so with the 4 spheres and the 2 crypts in each one, that's going to be 8 total. Hence, aha, that ring is important. I'll explain that in a second. Hence how we get the 8 medallion. There's a medallion at the end of each one. Now, in each sphere, that hourglass freezes enemies. The cherry restores a segment of life. The coins are going to be completely a non-factor in this game. We will not do any shopping at all. So the coins don't matter. So, like I said, in each sphere, there's going to be two crypts that we can go in. One of the crypts is going to be decidedly more difficult than the other one. In every single instance, once we go into the spheres, we're going to go to the more difficult crypt first. And the reason for that, plain and simple, is that the items either on the way to and or in those crypts are much more useful and powerful, and we want to get them ASAP. Okay, that bomb drop that I got right there is actually very important. I do need one at some point in these first 2 crypts in order to proceed. So the fact that I already have it is great. Now, back to that ring that I picked up. The magic ring is a consumable item that we're not going to use until we get into Crypt 6, or probably not for about another, about 20 minutes or so. What the magic ring does when you use it is it will take all of the quote-unquote big enemies in a room, and you can kind of tell which enemies are considered big enemies, and will turn them into smaller, much more squishy enemies. This is going to be crucial for a few select points in the run, 2 of which appear in Crypt 6. So the fact that we just have one already before we get there is very nice. So you see me using this fire wand extensively here. We're actually going to pick up a sword upgrade here. The fire wand is so important because keeping distance between yourself and the enemies in this game is so crucial, because when it comes to refilling your life by way of those cherries that enemies can drop, they're typically very stingy with them, so you cannot count on those to kind of keep you afloat. The other thing is that, like I mentioned before, about the mechanics of the fire wand, there are a lot of places where we just do not want to take damage, or we really want to minimize the amount of damage that we take. So, if we can assault enemies from afar, that just drastically raises our chances of not being hit, and therefore continuing to have the better power for our fire wand. I'm actually getting really lucky with these cherries here. I would never count on these during a run. Alright, so here's our first boss. So this is the clay golem. It attacks by splitting apart, and then once it does, you can hit its core here. You need to hit it 11 times. You can do, at most, you can hit it 6 times during a cycle, if you will. So the fact that we did it there in 2 cycles was ideal. So you see now that medallion has been affixed there, and now we can go out and get the other one. So what you also saw there when fighting that boss is the importance of getting the sword that we did there, because it basically doubles your attack power. Without that, that boss would be at least 4 cycles and a considerable waste of time. It's also going to be very important for the boss of Crypt number 1, which we are going to be going to next. That boss takes 17 hits with this sword. Without it, it would take 35. And considering we're going to be tanking damage on that boss, killing it sooner rather than later is even more important for that reason. So here we go. Here's the entrance to Crypt number 1. This crypt is very simple. We're only going to make one real detour to pick up... There's an armor upgrade in here that we'll get a little later on. But first, we need to come over here into these 2 rooms, which I refer to as the Belfry, because we're going to fight some bats. Now, bats are very, very random in this game. Not like the fixed enemy movement that I was talking about earlier. So if bats do like what they're doing here, where they slide all the way down onto the bottom of the screen or into the corners, it just wastes a bunch of time having to go get them. So this item that I'm obtaining here is the key. Every crypt has a key that is unique to it. We need to have that key in our possession in order to open the door that leads to the boss's room. Alrighty, so we got to clear everything out here to open that door. Well, to open all the doors, but specifically the one on the left, because this is going to bring us to an armor upgrade. Ooh, he cooperated nicely. There's an armor upgrade. And now we can get back on track. Now, I've skipped the text there, but you've seen plenty of it before when I was picking up items and everything. You'll notice I'm playing the Japanese version of this game. The only reason that we're doing that, and the only difference between the Japanese and North American versions, is the language itself, and therefore the text scroll is going to be much faster in Japanese, especially over the course of the 100% run, where we're going to be picking up more items and thus seeing more text boxes. We're saving at least a minute, if not 2. Alrighty, 17 hits on that boss. Well, you saw I was just tanking damage. So the less damage we tank there, the easier it is to survive. Alright, so now that we've collected both of the medallions in the land sphere, you're going to see that they're both affixed there, and then a staircase is going to open in between them. Now we are in the subterranean sphere, and you'll be able to tell that it's subterranean because there's all this bubbling lava around. Something else you're going to notice when I do use it is that now that I have 8 full segments of life, you're going to notice that the fire that comes, that I'm shooting out of my wand is going to look much different. Before it was kind of those small orbs that were doing the, in the boomeranging motion. Well, you're going to see me burn this here, and you see how it's kind of like this rolling column of fire now. So that's interesting for a couple of reasons. And I'll explain that in just a second, but first we got to make sure he gets finished talking so we can pick up an item here called the Moonbeam Moss. What the Moonbeam Moss does, it has infinite charges, and you can use it whenever you'd like to light up dark rooms and crypts, or in the overworld. There are a few there as well. Most of the dark rooms that we are going to encounter on this run, I am not going to be using the Moonbeam Moss for it, just because menuing to it and using it wastes time, and I know a lot of these rooms well enough that I just don't need them. That's another part of, I think, what makes this... What makes this run a lot of fun to watch is that there's going to be a lot of dark rooms that, especially when the game is played on stream, you really can't see anything in there. And yet I'm going to be navigating through them with, hopefully with ease. So, about the rolling columns of fire that are now coming out. First of all, they are more powerful, so they will do more damage, which is great. However, they are fairly slow, and thus it makes them harder to control. Now, when these columns, you can only have 3 of them on the screen at a time. Now, when they hit a target, they'll be absorbed. They don't keep going through, at least not at this level. So if you're throwing them out there, if you throw out a bunch and you miss, you've got to wait for them to disappear, and they'll fizzle out eventually. But you got to wait for them to disappear before you can throw out any more. So this item here is the rainbow drop. What this will allow us to do is it will allow us to traverse 1 tile wide gaps, such as holes in the ground, rivers, you know, space between islands, so on and so forth. It's like a step ladder of sorts, if you will. Ah, shoot. I was hoping I could just walk through there, and no dice there either. So now you're going to notice something. You see, now when I throw out my fire, it's back to that little orb again. The rolling column is gone because I have less than 8 full segments of life. Oh, shoot. Now I've got well less than 8 full segments of life. Which could be an issue, but I don't think it shouldn't be too bad. There we go. So that was the first example of some dark rooms. Here's going to be another one. There are blocks in here. They're kind of like in a W shape. We don't need to push any of the blocks in here. So it's not that big a deal. I didn't pick up that ring because I can only hold 1 at a time. So now this detour that we're taking here, this is the first deviation from the any percent route. We're picking up an armor upgrade that we would normally skip. However, in order to satisfy the 100% requirement, we do need to get it. I don't need that. We're going to push this block here. This room can be very problematic. There's a way that you can kind of hopefully manip these turrets here to fire, and I was able to do it. Good. If you're standing in a certain spot and they fire at a certain angle, at least the bottom one, the second one it fires, I've only taken 1 damage there, that's fine. Then you know that you'll be able to scoot through that corridor, which really takes up the entire screen along the bottom, where that cannon, which would normally be firing right at you, instead will fire off at slight angles instead and miss you. So these enemies here, these are referred to as ghost claws. We're avoiding them now, and it's a good thing too, because fighting them is rather annoying. There's going to be a room coming up here where we have to fight a few of them, and what makes that problematic is that those ghosts can just disappear, and when they do, they are impervious to damage, but that also wastes time. And this is the room here. There's 4 of them in the corners. They like to just float. See, they just disappear like that. You just got to wait for them to come back. Sometimes they'll reappear and then disappear immediately once again, which can be very frustrating when you're trying to save time in here, which is not easy to do. Fortunately, those ghosts you can just kill with fire. Oh, that's the other thing that makes these more maddening. Your fire wand is useless against them, so you have to kill them with the sword. Yet another reason why it's important to pick up that. Another reason why it's important to pick up that upgrade. Now, what you might have noticed there is that the fire wand wasn't doing that boomeranging effect. That's because technically I have less than 4 segments of life now. It's in the background, it's calculated in a numeric fashion, but represented in kind of the square fashion there. I picked up that cherry, so now I've got 4+. So I'll go back to the next. I'm back up to the next level of fire, which is actually it's not that big a deal for the rest of this crypt, so that's fine. But those orbs that would fizzle out as soon as they would make contact, those do a very small amount of damage. So that is definitely not a good place to be in with that wand if you need to use it for a damage output. Fortunately, we don't need to use any more fire for the rest of this crypt, because this room is the one right before the boss. And this boss has a very kind of has an interesting way of killing it. We exploit a we exploit one of its mechanics in a kind of a funny way, actually. So here's this boss fight. And that's it. So here's how that boss works. Normally, it's kind of like a caterpillar sort of thing that has multiple segments to it. The only segment that actually suffers damage is its back segment or its tail segment. However, all of its segments will suffer from hit stun. So if you walk into that room on the left-hand tile, which is important because that way you're directly below the boss, it's always going to walk directly towards your current position, which in this case is going to be straight down. What you can do is just, it walks straight down, you walk straight up, you bounce all of its segments in a pile against the wall, which you can do with the sword, and included in those segments is the tail, and basically you just knock everything back, damage the tail in the process, and just keep it piled against the wall as you just keep it stun locked, basically. So that little detour that I went to there, that is something that is, I would normally skip in any percent. That is required for 100%. That was a bomb upgrade. What he did is he increased my bomb capacity from 8 to 12, and he also refills the number of bombs that you have there. That is one of 3 bomb upgrades that we are going to pick up during the course of the run. So now we're into Crypt 3. It's actually a good thing that we get that bomb upgrade there because we need to use 5 of them to get through this crypt. So in any percent, bomb drops are much more crucial because you would normally skip what's down there unless you absolutely had to get it. However, because we're always going to get it for the 100% run, relying on bomb drops, the RNG of bomb drops is much less crucial in this category. We're just going to bomb our way up here. Here comes more of the ghosts. Luckily, we don't need to kill them. I just got that guy out of the way so that he wouldn't do so much damage to me. Him out of the way for sure. Now, in the middle of that room is basically just a hole in the floor where those ghosts will just continuously pour out until I think there's like 10 or 12 of them on the screen. So you definitely want to get out of that room ASAP, otherwise it's easy to get overwhelmed. All right, we got to kill all of these guys. So you notice when I came into this room, it was dark for a second, and then it wasn't. That was me using the Moonbeam Moss. That right there, and you saw kind of that little flashy rainbow bridge that I walked over that gap there. That's the rainbow drop in use. So we got to push this block again to get out. See me walking over there. I don't want you in my way. Alright, so this is the room before the boss. Now, I wonder if it'll pop up here. Maybe it will. Let me see if I kill these enemies, and it does. No. Okay. So, one thing that can be problematic about the ghosts, I'll explain in a second, actually, because here's the boss. What I want to do is walk up here, pin this guy against the wall, hit him 11 times, and immediately turn around and turn our attention to his friend. Hopefully get him at an angle where he is pinned against the wall, like so. Actually, that damage boost helped. It actually moved me backwards to where I wanted to be. That was nice. Alright, so the 4th medallion gotten. There we, ooh, and a gold split too. Nice. So what I was going to say about the ghost cloths is that if you pick up an hourglass, which freezes time in the room for about 20 seconds, if they're in a disappeared state when you pick that up, they will stay that way while time is frozen. And if you need to kill them to progress in a room, then you just have to wait for the time to run out. And needless to say, it is an immense waste of time. So now we're in the Sea Sphere. We talked to this guy here who gives us an extra segment of life. Again, this is going to be something that will be important for the Fire Wand. It is going to experience a drastic upgrade after the end of this next crypt. So another detour here to pick up another bomb upgrade. Now, in any percent, this is the bomb upgrade that we would get, because it's going to carry us through until the next bomb refill that we will get in the Sky Sphere, and then that will just carry us for the rest of the game. So it's a nice way to kind of evenly space all of your bomb refills. Because if you're just doing PB attempts and you don't get the bomb drops you need in the beginning of the game, I suppose you could you could farm, but you're more likely going to reset. Alright, so there's a hidden staircase here, which is only going to appear once all the enemies are dead. There we go. This is a very important item to pick up. First, we have to have a vortex box conversation with this man here. And then we pick up the Falcon Shoes. You're going to see the effect of them immediately here. They basically double our movement speed, which really has two benefits. One, with this being a speed run, it allows us to move through areas more quickly. But two, the extra maneuverability is going to be very important for some of the enemies that we're going to be encountering here when it comes to getting around them. So there is that great effect as well. All of the enemies in this game always appear in the exact same places. So you'll notice me kind of taking a second to enter a screen on a very particular tile, and that's because I know where the enemies are going to be, and it's going to help me avoid them. Alright, so this is crypt number 6. This is the most difficult crypt in the game. Here's one reason why, is going to be these wizard enemies. These are very tricky to deal with, because those blue arrows that they shoot out, they actually nullify the fire shots that come out of your wand. We also have these guys here. These kind of little skeleton turtle things, I guess. We also have these enemies here, the black wisps that you see there. They only move diagonally, but they move very erratically, and pinning them down, especially with this wand, can be very tricky if they just shift direction all of a sudden. So fighting them can be rather challenging, but we do have to go into this room because this has the key, so we need this to get into the boss's door. And now we come back and we fight these guys. Now, what's notable about these enemies is, much like the ghosts, they are also impervious to your fire wand, so you have to kill them with the sword. They can move, even though they move slowly, they can kind of change direction pretty suddenly, so fighting them with the sword is not ideal. You'd like to be able to keep distance, but unfortunately, because you can't use the fire wand, that's not an option. Alright, so you're about to see the effect of the ring coming up here. So as we enter this next room here, there's 4 wizards, and now there are no wizards. Instead, there are these little slugs here. That's because when you use the fire wand, the big enemies, like I said before, become these smaller, much more manageable enemies. Now, that particular enemy is what we refer to as a slug homie, because it dropped another ring, which is phenomenal. We're going to need another ring in a room later on in this very crypt. So the fact that I already have one is extremely reassuring. Now, if you don't have it, there's a room where you have to fight 4 wizards. You're essentially confined to the outer edges of the room, and it's extremely difficult to deal with. So using the ring instead, and in that room we pick up an extremely important item. So unfortunately, it's something that really can't be skipped. So the fact that we have the ring to deal with it is going to make our lives much, much easier. That also makes life really easy. Getting the... Oops. Facing the wrong way. Getting the hourglass to slow down enemies. One thing that is noteworthy about when you have the hourglass in effect, even though the enemies are frozen, you can still take damage from them. So you can't be too cavalier about how you go up and assault them, despite the fact that they can't move. They can still deal damage. So that is important to remember. Got to kill all these wisps in order to open the door to the right, otherwise we would just ignore them, but unfortunately that's not an option. to blast our way open down here and equip the ring because this is the room where we're going to use it. And there we go. Ring used. And these are squishy enemies again, which is great. Now, we'd love to see another ring here because we need one more. Not for this crypt, but actually for crypt number 8. But we still have time to get it. So the fact that we didn't get it in this room is really not an issue. In fact, I can even try to get it here. I've got fire that can easily kill them. And we got it! Perfect! Wow. Thank you for cooperating, game. When it comes to enemies dropping items, not all of them have the same, I guess, drop table is the best way of putting it. The slugs in the slugs drop table is the rings, so that's why we focus on them to give us the rings, because very few enemies do. All right, push that block right there. That's going to reveal a staircase there. We go through here. Now these two wizards, we don't bother using the ring here because there's only 2 of them. In the rooms that have 4 as well as other enemies, it's pretty important. So we want to try to get diagonal to them because they can only shoot in the 4 cardinal directions. So getting diagonal to them is the way to fight them. All right, so this is what I like to refer to affectionately as Poverty Trinex. This is going to be easily the longest and most random boss fight of the game. What we want to do is kind of what I was doing there, where I had the head, where I was in between the head and the body, because after a certain while, it's going to try to return to its spot on the body, but if you are just constantly, hitting it against the wall, then it doesn't have an opportunity to do so. And you can essentially just put it in a loop where you're just infinitely hitting it and easily destroying it. Oh boy. Oops. Okay, that's fine. We shouldn't be taking too much more damage here. Shouldn't be. I do have 2 potions if I need them, but that's fine. We got through here, no problem. We're going to take that damage boost. That's fine. Get the medallion. Thank you. So the fact that I did not have to use a potion there is actually really nice, because it gives us 2 for this next section. We're probably going to need at least 1, but the fact that we have 2 is just wonderful safety. So now we have 12 full segments of life, which is going to give us what I like to call the good fire. And you saw the effect of it there. It's much faster, it rolls in a much heavier pattern, and it does a lot more damage. It also will roll through enemies, as opposed to what was happening before when it would hit an enemy and then get absorbed and essentially stop. This will continue to go through. This is going to be crucial for quite a few applications coming up. Alright, so we're taking a detour here to pick up a 100% item. This is easily the longest... Oops. This is easily the longest detour of any 100% required item in the game. Fortunately, the item that we are picking up does have some use, so it's not a complete waste, but it is rather time-consuming. There's a... Oh, no. There's a reason why we skip it in any percent. And this is the item here. This is the fire shield. So so now the red circular shots that enemies throw out, we can block it with this shield. The upgrade that we had before would only block the blue ones. Alright, so even though, like I said, because of the numeric value of your life total, I took a very small amount of damage, which has knocked me below the full 12 segments. So I do not have that quote-unquote good fire anymore. So you're going to see me do something up here, which probably will look pretty curious, but because I have that extra potion, it actually makes sense. First, we're going to get our way through these enemies. Then we're going to blow this open. So I'm going to use that to refill my life. And the reason why is because the benefit that I get from this good fire and how easily and quickly it kills enemies makes it completely worth it. We're going to need to have this full we're going to need to have this full life to use the good fire on the next boss, and I'm going to keep that potion in my pocket just in case I take any damage before I get to the boss room, so that I can guarantee that I will kill it. Because if I don't have the good fire for it, it's going to take much longer. A boss fight that can be as quick as one cycle. Whoops. That can be as quick as one cycle in 100% will take no fewer than 4, and in any percent, if we don't have the good fire, it's going to be no fewer than 6. So the amount of time that is saved by having this is considerable. So the importance of it cannot be stressed enough. All right, so here we go into Crypt 5. These little tadpoles also move very randomly and can be difficult. All right, so we just wait for this block here to shoot out its daggers, and then we walk past it. That is virtually impossible to see, even on my CRT. On the stream, I know it's even more difficult. This next room here, it's great to have the good fire because we can just throw this up, throw this that way, throw this that way. Do damage wherever we need to. Like there, and push the block and go. Alright. So we're going to take a detour here over into the east to pick up not only the key, but also a sword upgrade, which is actually something that we only will get. The sword upgrade is something that you do not get in the any percent route. This is also one of the very few, I think it's only one of 2 rooms in the game where you're required to kill 8 enemies in order to proceed. This room gets very hectic, so having the good fire to clear out all the enemies that actually will take damage from the fire wand is very nice. So there it is. There's our sword upgrade. We're really not going to use the sword for much at all. Now, there's going to be an additional sword upgrade that we'll get once we get to the Sky Sphere. That is absolutely something that you would get in the any percent route. It's basically a required item to finish the game. Without it, it's too difficult. Alrighty. Unfortunately, we can only hold one ring at a time. I would love to be able to have multiple ones, because if you could just stack them up, it would certainly make runs of this game much easier if you could just stockpile them. But alas, there's a block there we need to push to get out. Okay. Go. Would rather not take damage there, and we didn't. Any prisoners in here that don't give you items, you can just press the 2 button to skip their text all at once, as opposed to having to mash the 1 button once their text completes to go through each one by one. Alright, so this crab is either going to move left or right when it gets up to the top. If it moves to the right, we can 1-cycle it. If it moves to the left, we're going to have to do this in 2. Ah, and it moves to the right. So hopefully we put all these flames in the right place. 3, 4, 5, 6 damage, and it's done. Perfect. Perfect. Alrighty. And we now have our 6th medallion. More importantly, this is the 2nd medallion of the sea sphere, which means we are now done with it. We're going to affix it right there to our left, and then a staircase right next to it will immediately open up. And in we go. Now we're into the Sky Sphere. One thing I can't believe I've gotten 37 plus minutes into this without mentioning is the soundtrack in this game. The soundtrack is outstanding, and there's even better music to come, specifically the theme for the final boss. Especially for the TurboGrafx 16. It's got such a great soundtrack that many people who are new to this game enjoy. So the time that you see there in my splits, 53 minutes and 1 second. That is the world record for this category. I also hold the world record for the any percent category, which is 47 minutes and 49 seconds. I'm sorry, 48 seconds. So we can block those fireballs because we have the fire shield. In any percent, you cannot do that because you don't pick up the shield that can block them, which makes this section a lot more problematic. Now, we'd like to avoid damage if we can. We didn't. That's fine. Because we're gonna take a detour into here. And we are going to pick up a double potion here. If you had none, that would actually give you 2. The treasure chest on the left gives you bombs. I already have 13. That's going to be plenty for the rest of this run, so I don't need to pick it up. However, if I had any less than, let's say, like 10 or 11, then I would pick it up just to be safe. And so that way I don't have to rely on drops. Alright, so we are going to be... So I'm going to enter this room here, and I'll explain what this is in a second. So what I did there was, she gave me a password. She also asked me if I wanted to continue the game. I said no. The reason why I said no, and then immediately started the game back up, is that when you restart the game like that, your life gets filled to full. So that accomplished 2 things. First of all, it saved my game, so should I happen to die in this crypt, which is possible, then I would go back to there as opposed to the temple. The other thing it did is it refilled my life without me having to use a potion. So this is going to give me some extra marathon safety, because getting through the first part of this crypt, you have to have the good fire. Otherwise, it is much, much longer and much more difficult to navigate. So you see how the good fire just absolutely tears through. Those mummies have a decent amount of HP. However, the good fire absolutely just steamrolls them and makes life a lot easier. Okay, it did take 1 damage, but I'm still at least 12 as far as the game is concerned. So the good fire is still intact. After this room, the good fire is much less important, with the glaring exception of the boss fight, and I will explain that thoroughly once we get there. But here's why we do this crypt first. We just picked up the Bell of the Sky. This is going to basically break the rest of the game. I'm going to go ahead and use it right away. What it does is any rooms that have sealed or locked doors that would only be opened if you either kill all of the enemies in the room or push a certain block in the room, or both. Instead, by ringing the bell, it essentially just forces the door open. This is going to make skipping a bunch of fights in rooms possible, and save us a whole bunch of time. So we like saving time in speedruns, so we do it. Yeah, I don't even want to deal with this one jerk. Because a lot of those blocks there will shoot out daggers if you get near them. So trying to get in there and tangle with him is not worth it. Ooh, I even got some life back, just for safety. Yeah, don't want to kill all the enemies in that room. Screw it, let's just keep going. Bust our way through here. Shove those guys over to the side. Now this skeleton here, we're going to see these guys a couple more times. They move very fast, they move in a very erratic fashion, and, like a few of the other enemies that we've encountered before, you cannot kill them with fire. You have to use your sword. This is another one of those rooms like with those orange ghosts that I showed you before. where there's a hole in the floor and these enemies will just continually pop out of it. So we just want to get out of here as soon as possible before we get completely overwhelmed. We want them out of our way. We don't have to worry about killing all of them, so instead we just force it open with the bell, make the staircase appear. This room is going to be our last instance of using a ring. All of those scary enemies now become these little kind of wavy blob dudes. And with the good fire, we burn through them with the greatest of ease. Now we're on to the boss. I'm going to call serious time for myself here. Okay, that is the successful quick kill. That boss is extremely difficult to deal with for several reasons. First of all, it has a whole bunch of HP, so the fight with it is very drawn out. Second of all, it moves around the room in that kind of gold puma mask thing, and it will open and close at regular intervals, so it makes you know, the opportunity to even hit it few and far between. That fight is just a war of attrition. If you do not get that quick kill, if you don't get at least most of it, that's a reset. So I walk in a very particular pattern to get the boss to move across the top of the screen like that, so that I can get it to open in that spot where, right in front of where I'm going to be, and I can throw a bunch of good fire at it, which is so important. And it allows me to kill it not only quickly but unscathed, which is great. So now there's just one medallion to go. Before we get to the next crypt, there's going to be a couple of things that we're going to get here. So we have some errands to run first before we can obtain the final medallion and confront the evil Dearth to reacquire the princess for the grace of Neutopia. We're going to take a detour to the screen to the west here. This is something we only pick up in the 100% category. We would skip this in any percent. This is a life upgrade. Now, interesting note about life upgrades and satisfying the 100% category. In order to satisfy that, you just need to have a full life bar. Now, there are 4 life upgrades out there. However, considering that you always get a life upgrade after you clear a crypt, that's 8 free ones that you're going to get. You only need to get 3 of the 4 optional ones to satisfy getting the full bar in order to do it for 100%. So this here is the strongest sword. You need the Bell of the Sky to get to it. That's another big reason why we do Crypt 8 before 7 here, because you need to do it in order to make that staircase appear, which you see it's already gone. I would need to ring the bell again to make it appear. The strongest sword, you're going to see the power of it on the next boss. It will be very, very evident. It's also going to kill this guy in 2 hits. We can just... I mean, now we can just plow through just about everything with this sword of great strength here. Also, I referred to it as the strongest sword, which, you know, by definition it is. That's also its name. If you see it there if you can read Japanese when you look at that text box, it will say, you know, something along the lines of, Jazeta has obtained the strongest sword. It doesn't have, like, you know, it's not the red sword, the ruby sword, or the sword of legend or anything like that. It is just the strongest sword. Alright, so just a couple more screens to go here, and then we will enter Crypt 7. Crypt 7 is going to have an upgrade to fetch, which is only done to satisfy 100%. We would normally skip it in any percent. And I will explain what that is when we get to it. Okay, we want to coax this to go down so that we can move by it on the top side. Alright, don't want to fight these guys, so we just ring the bell, and all those doors just pop wide open. There's that hole in the ground, like I was talking about. All the enemies just continually keep popping out of it. It's very terrifying. Oops. Okay, that damage actually isn't a big deal. Alright, I like to be able to see what I'm doing in here, so we're going to immediately use the Moonbeam Moss and then switch to the fire, because we need that to kill everything. Oh, hey, look, even a cherry upgrade. Or cherry, bonus. Got our key. Gonna turn our bell on. We're gonna pause for a second here, let him get close, and then, because every time you step on one of those diamond tiles, it will, that's what causes those arrows to come shooting out of the wall. There's the Rainbow Bridge in all its glory. Just got to shove our way through a few blocks here in order to get to this entrance on the right-hand side. We're going to go ahead and kill this bat to pop open this door. And this is the detour here to pick up the shield upgrade that I was talking about. And you will see it is definitely a shield upgrade. It looks very, very magnificent. You'll see it here when he holds it up to obtain it. Here we go. Look at this shield. Very fancy. It has horns and everything. So what this shield upgrade does is it blocks those blue arrow shots that we saw from the goat wizards in the overworld and like the purple robed wizards in Crypt 6. Here's the cool thing. We are never going to see any of those enemies for the rest of the run. So unfortunately, this upgrade does us zero good for the rest of what we're doing here, which is unfortunate. Alright, here's the bell's time to shine. We're going to use it in this room. We're going to use it in this room. And we're going to use it in this room. Unfortunately, the bell will not open the doors that lead to the bosses like this one. You do have to kill all the enemies in the room first. Alright, so here comes our boss. This is one of the harder bosses in the game, but don't blink. Killing him is as easy as 1, 2, and 3. That is much more difficult if you don't have that sword upgrade. Alright. So, we have all 8 medallions. That door behind, the blue door at the top of the screen is going to open up. It's going to allow us to go to the North Pole to confront Dearth. But we're not going to do that quite yet. Instead, we have to make one more very brief dip into the Sky Sphere, because there's one more bomb upgrade that we need to get. Now, this is ironic for 2 reasons. First of all, you need to use a bomb in order to get it. Second of all, that bomb that we use to get this bomb upgrade is the very last bomb that we are going to use for the rest of the run. But we got to do it for 100%. Alright, so there we go. Now our capacity is 20. So all those wings that I've been picking up that you might have seen throughout the game, here's the only time we use them. The wings warp you back to the temple. Now that we've done that, now we can go in the door and we can confront Dearth. Dearth takes 32 hits to kill, and I'll explain his movement pattern when I'm done here. I'll give you an opportunity to enjoy the music, because it is fantastic. Okay, 8 hits in that top cycle is ideal. Seven hits in the bottom cycle is ideal. So I've hit him 30 times. Here it's just going to be 1, 2, and he's done. So time is not yet. It's going to be once we get into the next room and everything fades to black. So the way that that boss works is he can appear in one of 6 spots on the top of the screen or the bottom of the screen in either the left, middle, or right kind of thirds, if you will. If you do not move laterally at all, he's always going to appear in the middle section, and he will alternate being above and below you, and he always starts out above you. So we use that to manipulate his pattern to be in just the right place so that we can stab him with the sword. Now, without that sword, it takes like over 60 hits to kill him, and you just lose that war of attrition. That is time. Once the screen fades to black there. So 5331 is a fantastic run, considering that I took about a 15 or second or so detour in order to make the save before I went into Crypt 8. So that was a very, very good run. I'm actually glad that I laid that down for this demonstration here. So, and then the credits roll and we do kind of a little montage of all the different areas that we're in, the bosses that we fight, so on and so forth. So, but that's it as far as the run goes. I'd like to thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed what I did there. I am very much hoping that this will get some strong consideration for a few reasons. First of all, like I said, this game was showcased at Calithon in March and RPG Limit Break in May, and especially at the latter, at Limit Break. The reception for it was very strong. This has a growing community. I even have a friend of mine that's working on a randomizer for it. So this game is starting to gain some traction. It's starting to get some attention, and a lot of people really do enjoy it. Another reason why I really hope that this is able to get in is because it's a TurboGrafx 16 game. To me, the TurboGrafx 16, I understand it wasn't very popular here in North America, but it is a criminally underrepresented console when it comes to speedrunning. There are a lot of great speedrunning games on it, and to me, I think this is one of the best ones. So to be able to showcase this for a large audience is something that I think the game really deserves. Another reason why I really hope that not just this game, but myself are able to have a run here at GDQ Express is because the convention center where it is going to be taking place is about like 20 to 25 minutes away from my house. So this is essentially happening in my backyard. So I think to be able to do a speed run here for my local community as well would actually be a really cool story and something that I would really appreciate being able to do essentially right here in my hometown. So this is something that would mean a lot to me if I'm able to do it specifically for the GDQ that is happening in this location. So again, I thank you for watching. I appreciate your consideration for not only myself, but for this wonderful game as well. And if you have any questions, you have my in my profile is going to be my Twitch link, so you can always get a hold of me there. I do have my own Discord. Obviously, there will be my email along with this. If you have any questions, want to get any further information about me, the game, or anything else, I encourage you to reach out to me, and I would love to speak further about anything involved with this. So that's going to do it for me. Thanks so much for watching, and hopefully I will be bringing this game to GDQ Express 2019 in September. So I will sign off here, and until next time, take care.